Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a bit of a cosmic journey. We're stepping back in time to translate some truly profound 13th century scholastic thought into a framework that, well, honestly, it might completely change how you view reality. We're exploring the mind of Thomas Aquinas, and specifically his monumental work, the Summa Theologica. You see, Aquinas didn't just look at the universe as some random collection of objects. No, he saw this brilliantly, strictly ordered universe, a grand chain of being where literally everything, from the absolute highest spiritual realm right down to the physics of our everyday world, is completely interconnected. It's just a massive, incredibly detailed architecture of existence.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To really get Aquinas, we have to start with this profound, honestly, kind of terrifying scholastic question. What would actually happen if God just stopped thinking about the universe? In Aquinas' view, the universe is definitely not a clock that got wound up once and left to just tick away on its own. Not at all. If the continuous, sustaining divine thought were to pause for even a fraction of a second, the entire universe, you, me, the stars, the earth, would instantly annihilate. Just poof. Vanish into absolute nothingness.
To unpack this whole universal machine, we're going to follow Aquinas' own logical steps. First, the universal governor. Second, the mechanics of miracles. Third, the angelic hierarchy. And finally, how angels communicate.
All right, let's kick things off at the absolute top. Section 1. The universal governor, sustaining existence.
Aquinas leans heavily on earlier thinkers to build his case here, particularly quoting Augustine, who basically said, if the ruling power of God were withdrawn from his creatures, their nature would at once cease and all nature would collapse. And that right there is a totally foundational concept in the Summa. Existence isn't some one-time historical event that happened billions of years ago in the distant past. It's a continuous, active outpouring of divine power. It is this constant flow of energy that keeps literally everything from just falling back into the void.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between what Aquinas calls the cause of becoming versus the cause of being. Think of a builder in a house. The builder is the cause of the house becoming, right? Once the house is built, the builder can pack up his tools, walk away, and the house remains standing just fine. But God's preservation is completely different. God is the cause of being. It's more like the sun illuminating the air. The sun doesn't just make the air bright once, its continuous presence is what actually keeps the air bright. The very instant the sun dips below the horizon, the air goes dark. If God walked away, reality goes dark.
Okay, moving down to section 2, the mechanics of miracles. Breaking the natural rules.
So if the universal governor set up all these strict natural rules to keep the universe running smoothly, how exactly does he interact with them? More specifically, what happens when those fundamental rules get completely bypassed? Well, in Thomistic philosophy, a miracle has a very specific definition. It's not just something rare or unusual or, a little difficult to explain. A true miracle is an effect that occurs outside the established natural order, where the cause is absolutely hidden from all observers. It's an event where the natural order is directly overridden by God as the first universal cause. The cause is hidden because it's operating way up above the entire chain of created physical nature.
Because Aquinas absolutely loved order, he meticulously categorized miracles. He didn't just throw them all into one big bucket. He divided them up into 3 distinct ranks, based exactly on how far the power of nature is surpassed by the event. He looked at the substance of the deed, the subject of the deed, and the measure and order of the deed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the absolute highest rank of miracles. Ranked 1 miracles surpass nature in the very substance of the deed. What this means is the action itself is entirely, categorically impossible for nature to ever perform under any circumstances. Aquinas gives examples like 2 physical bodies occupying the exact same space at the exact same time, or the sun suddenly reversing its course in the sky. Nature simply has absolutely no mechanism to do this.
Contrast that highest rank with the second and third ranks. Here, nature is bypassed in the specific execution. So in a rank 2 miracle, nature could technically achieve the end result, like giving life, but it absolutely cannot do it in this specific subject, like, say, raising someone from the dead. Then, in a rank 3 miracle, nature can achieve the result in the subject, like curing a fever, but it is bypassed in the measure and speed. So a sudden, instantaneous cure without that normal, gradual healing process, that's a rank 3 miracle. God basically just skips all the intermediate steps.
Moving further down the chain, we hit section 3, the angelic hierarchy, heavenly middle management.
Having established the supreme governor and his ability to kind of override the system, we're now shifting down the cosmic chain of being to the angels. Think of them as the spiritual middle management of the universe, helping to actually execute the divine order throughout creation. And just like his ranking of miracles, Aquinas, pulling a lot from earlier theologians like Dionysius, argues that the angelic realm is perfectly, rigidly organized. It's split into 3 distinct hierarchies. And this division isn't just random, it's based entirely on their proximity to God's universal knowledge.
So the crucial point is how this heavenly corporate ladder actually functions. The highest hierarchy sits, as Aquinas vividly puts it, in the vestibule of God. They grasp pure universal truths immediately and directly from the very top. The second hierarchy understands these truths as they depend on universal created causes. And then the third, the lowest hierarchy, understands truth as it is applied to specific particular things in the universe. Basically, the knowledge flows downward.
Because knowledge flows downward like that, superior angels actually have to enlighten inferior angels. An inferior angel simply doesn't have the intellectual bandwidth, let's call it, to grasp the massive, blinding universal concepts that the highest angels receive. So the superior angel actually takes that massive concept and breaks it down, makes it digestible. It's exactly like a master teacher taking a super complex advanced theory and dividing it up into smaller, manageable points so a beginner student can actually wrap their head around it.
Which leads us perfectly to Section 4, How Angels Communicate, the Physics of Spirits. This brings up a really fascinating question. How exactly does this teaching happen? Let's zoom in on the mechanics of this angelic enlightenment and explore the physics of spirits. Because how do beings without physical bodies, vocal cords, or ears actually speak to one another? Well, Aquinas contrasts this directly with human speech. Our speech is honestly incredibly clunky. We have these mental concepts, but they are trapped behind what he calls the wall of the body. To share a thought, we literally have to push it out through the door of our tongue using physical sound waves, which then have to travel and hit your eardrums. Angelic speech has no such physical barrier. It is a direct, instant transfer of a mental concept purely by an act of the will. An angel just chooses to direct its interior thought to another, and boom, it is instantly known.
Let's see how this builds. Because of this, angels inhabit a completely different reality. Since they operate entirely outside of physical space and time, physical distance literally doesn't exist for their communication. An angel isn't like shouting across the cosmos. Furthermore, because it's directed entirely by the will, an angel can privately direct a thought to one specific recipient without the rest of the entire heavenly hosts overhearing it. It is just this perfectly efficient, highly targeted network of pure intellect.
And yes, angels definitely do speak to God, but not in the way they speak to each other. Since God is the ultimate source of all truth, an angel can obviously never teach or enlighten God. Instead, Aquinas says that angels speak to God in 2 main ways, either by consulting his divine will to seek guidance on what ought to be done in some new work, or by just marveling at and expressing deep admiration for his infinite divine perfection.
So, as we step back and take in the sheer scale of Aquinas' vision here, it leaves us with a truly provocative thought. From the continuous, sustaining power of the universal governor, to the precise mechanics of miracles, right down to the instant, silent network of angelic communication, are we totally missing a perfectly ordered angelic universe functioning all around us, simply because we're trapped behind the sensory limits of our own human perception? It's just a breathtaking philosophical framework, one that absolutely invites us to look past the physical surface of our world and really wonder about the grand chain of being operating just behind the veil.